Hi guys! In this video, I'm sharing my experience of moving to Abu Dhabi. I will talk about the mistakes I've made and I will give you little tips that could be very useful if you're considering moving to Abu Dhabi. The number one mistake most people make, and one I made myself, is underestimating the budget for settling in. It's true that it's difficult to find clear answers about the cost of living in Abu Dhabi. I have made a video on the topic, so I encourage you to watch it, but I also think that the mistake comes from the fact that we are used to plan monthly, whereas here you have to think annually. Many things are paid annually and upfront. This means that you need to be able to put a lot of money at the beginning, even before having earned any salary. And if it's not annually, it will be quarterly, at least for the main expenses like the rent, school or nursery. That is what makes settling in so expensive. To illustrate that, just to find a place to live, you will have to pay upfront your rent for the full year, or at least for the first quarter if you negotiate 4 payments, a security deposit of 5% of the rent, agency fees also 5% of the rent, the deposit for ADDC and chiller, and to that you can also add the purchase of all the appliances because it's very rarely included, and all the furniture and necessities. If you're renting a car, very often you'll have to pay monthly upfront, and you will have to leave a deposit also upfront. And I really advise you to add a small budget at the beginning for the fines, because they keep coming quite regularly. The time for you to become familiar with the rules and regulations here. Other costs you might want to consider are healthcare costs, especially if your visa and so your health insurance is not sorted right from the beginning. If you need to go to a hospital, it can add up very quickly. So really consider all of that when you're being offered a job here, and make sure you set aside enough money to finance your settling in and also part of your first year. A little tip that can help you to reduce the costs and settle in better condition is to have your belongings and even some furniture sent over. It can be expensive, so most of the time we want to save money on that part, and we think we can buy everything when we arrive here, which is true. You will find everything, but be aware that some things, and especially some brands, are more expensive here, and also if you're expecting a shipment, it can reduce the initial expense here. The second thing to note, which is really important, is that as long as you don't have your Emirates ID and visa sorted, you won't be able to do most of the basic steps here. You won't be able to open a bank account, you won't be able to rent an apartment, and you won't be able to have your local driving license, for example. The process to get your Emirates ID cannot be done remotely, as you need to be physically present. You will have to pass a medical test and give your fingerprint. So if you arrive in the country under the sponsor of a company, this usually doesn't take too long, as the company will help you sort things out. If you arrive here to set up your own business and that your visa will be under your business, then it can take a bit longer. And if you come under a tourist visa with the goal to find a job here, then this is an important thing to consider, as you might be in this situation for several weeks, if not months. The third point not to underestimate is transportation, especially if you come from Europe, for example, where public transport is very well developed, as are sidewalks and bike paths. But don't think that here would be the same and you can easily go around without a car. It's not quite true. The roads are built for driving around. Sometimes there's even no sidewalks. And as for public transport, if you live downtown and only need to go around downtown, it will be fine. But if you live a bit further on the island, then it can become really challenging. The network is still pretty limited. On some lines, buses only pass every 2 hours and they are super crowded. And even if the city has big plans for developing the network of public transportation, it's not there yet. Roads are really designed for cars, the network is pretty well built, it's easy to get around, and traffic jam is fairly limited. Conclusion, you'll either need a car or you can also use taxi. But in both options, you will need to plan a budget for that. Even though taxis are fairly cheap, if you use daily, it's still a budget to consider. It's very important to be mindful of the rules and regulations here if you want to avoid any issues. For example, it's forbidden to take pictures of people without prior consent. It's also not allowed to consume alcohol on the streets. Running a red light will cost you a lot, and there are cameras everywhere, so almost no infraction goes unnoticed. As for drinking and driving, it's zero tolerance, and you will risk prison and a really big fine. This is a Muslim country, so it's really important to abide by the local customs and traditions. For example, public displays of affection are to be avoided, and during Ramadan, it's not allowed to eat or drink in public during daylight hours. Even if things are softening over time, it's important to know and respect them. Many expats come to Abu Dhabi with big plans, thinking there is so much to do, so many opportunities to seize, and yes, it's true in a sense. But it's also true that no one is waiting for you, and quite the contrary, competition is harsh. If you are looking for a job, know that you'll be competing with the whole world, literally. Depending on your field, you might be competing with people with very strong experience and skills, but also people from different backgrounds will be willing to accept lower salaries than you would be ready to accept. Another detail that is really important is that many employers require a previous UAE experience, and they can be very inflexible about this. So my advice is really to develop your network. It can always help. And if you're coming here to start your own business, be mindful that the market is very different here. The city is such a melting pot that it's only by living here for a little while that you can observe how people live and consume. Although the UAE is a tax-free country and salaries are often higher, the cost of living can also be higher, especially rents. They've really increased lately. And then there is the downside of not paying any tax. This means you don't have public services. You'll have to pay for education, healthcare, everything. Also, it's true that we live surrounded by temptations. Luxury is everywhere and more affordable than in many other countries. The fine restaurants, the beach club, the brunch, the hotels, shopping at the mall, the trips, all these activities come at a cost. So my advice for newcomers is not to get carried away with a lifestyle that could be beyond what you can actually afford. Make sure you have carefully considered all your day-to-day expenses before you can enjoy everything that Abu Dhabi has to offer. And my second piece of advice, don't forget to save. Here, you don't contribute to any retirement plan, so you need to prepare and secure your future. Maintaining connection with your family and friends is really important. This is even more true when you live in a country like the UAE, where sometimes you can feel like you're a little bit in a bubble, disconnected from the realities of your previous life. There are a few things to consider to maintain relationship with your loved ones. First is the time difference. It's 2 hours with Europe, 3 hours with the UK, but here clocks don't change in winter. That means you can add another hour to the time difference. Secondly, be aware that calls via the apps like WhatsApp or FaceTime are blocked. The most widely used alternative is Botim, so make sure your family and friends are using it. Another option would be to use a VPN, but keep in mind that it's not legal in the country. Do not forward your mail to your new address in Abu Dhabi. It will never arrive. There are no mailboxes or no postmen. What will happen is that your mail will arrive in Abu Dhabi, but no one will take it further, and you won't even be informed that it's here somewhere sitting in a sorting center. The solution is to open a PO box and have your mail forwarded there. Same thing with your loved ones. If they want to send a postcard or packages, they will have to use a private company such as DHL, or send it to your PO box if you have one. There's this common misconception about Abu Dhabi that nature is missing. I would say that's incorrect. We're actually surrounded by nature. The sea is everywhere you turn to. The mangrove extends over 7,000 hectares, and the desert is right on the city's doorstep. It's simply a different nature than what we are used to. If we are talking about nature as greenery, I also think many people would be surprised. It's actually a lot greener than what we can think. There are many parks, and the city is doing a lot to put greenery around the roads, in all residences, and you can also encounter wild animals such as gazelles, for example. A quick word about the weather, as it has a big impact on several aspects of life here. If you don't know it already, the sun is out every day in the UAE. We rarely see clouds and even more rarely rain. So it's very important to protect from the sun, as it's really strong, and the hottest hours of the day are a bit different from what we know in Europe. Here, the morning sun is already very strong. There are essentially two seasons, summer and winter. Winter is the best time, going roughly from October to May, and then from June to September it's summer, where temperatures and humidity are so high that it's really unbearable to be outside. This has a big impact on the lives of residents, on their activities and consumption habits. For example, many expats return to their home country for very long periods during summer. So it has a big impact on some industries. For example, if you're a sports coach or if you own a cafe or restaurant, then summer will be a very slow period for your business. Health insurance is mandatory in Abu Dhabi to obtain your visa. If you're an employee, your employer will cover it. So that's good news. But keep in mind, if you need to see a specialist that is not covered by your insurance, then it can be very pricey. If you're coming here to start your own business, health insurance will be your responsibility. And the prices depend on gender, age, and medical history. For example, health insurance for a woman of childbearing age can be 5 to 6 times more expensive than for a male of the same age. That's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and it was useful to you. If that's the case, let me know by leaving a like, a comment below, and please share it to anyone that could be interested. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Thank you and see you soon.